I am very disappointed in much of the world when it comes to all of the trillions of dollars that we have been printing and how we have distributed them without thinking about investing in our future.
For some people, the coronavirus pandemic might have meant much more than a health scare. It could have meant losing a job or even being pushed into poverty. It's left a lot of people worrying about the long-term implications for our society and our economy. But now some experts are arguing it's the perfect opportunity to press the restart button, reflect, and reimagine how we could build a planet that's healthier, more sustainable, and more fair. So what would that look like? And is it even possible? To help us figure this out is our guest today, Halla Tomasdottir, the CEO of the B team. Halla, thank you so much for being with us. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Iceland, normally in New York City, but taking a little break in my home country.
We've really been talking a lot during these days about capitalism failing and how the pandemic has really highlighted some of those risks. What are your thoughts on where we currently are?
Well, it's been a difficult period and we're not through it yet, but there's no doubt in my mind that as hard as this is also the biggest opportunity I have ever seen for actually resetting our economy so that it works for humanity, so that it works for our only home, the planet.
From your perspective, what would a more just global economic system look like?
Shareholder primacy has failed us. We need to now work hard to accelerate a transition to stakeholder capitalism. And it means that you create shared prosperity for all the stakeholders that matter, from your employees to your customers, to your community, to the environment, because there is no business beyond planetary boundaries or with a broken social contract or with a broken supply chain.
Can you give us, from your perspective, some good examples of companies that are engaging in this conversation and they are going in the right direction?
Yeah, and there are fortunately many. One of my favorite examples is probably the B team leader, Emmanuel Faber, the CEO of Danone, the world's largest yogurt maker. And so during COVID, he decided to move up his deadline, which used to be 2030, and say that by 2025, he would become a certified B corporation for all of his operations. That's such a bold goal because it means that he's going to hold himself and the company accountable. And this is, I think, the kind of things that more and more companies are thinking about. And I sense both from finance and business that ESG, environmental, social, and governance metrics, are finding its place next to profit.
You also mentioned, obviously, climate as the environment of ESG. We often tend to forget, even when we talk about GDP and different economic measures, the impact on the environment. Do you think the conversation is beginning to change there?
It's changing really fast right now, but not fast enough because we need to transform our ways at speed and scale like we have never been able to do before. And that will take all of us, not just business, but also our governments and our citizens. And it's really three things that we need to be looking at. Reducing our emissions. We need to halve them by 2030. And this is something that every business needs to be thinking about how they do and how they bring others in their sectors along. Number two, we need to reverse incredible nature loss and start regenerating. We need about 1 trillion trees, and everybody can incorporate that into the way they're operating. And last but not least, we need to reduce waste and start to accelerate the circular use in our production and in how business operates.
These days, when we're talking about, building back better, we're talking obviously about bailouts. Do you think the relationship between public and government will change? And what do you think of that relationship right now?
I am very disappointed in much of the world when it comes to all of the trillions of dollars that we have been printing and how we have distributed them without thinking about investing in our future. When we bail out businesses without any expectation that they pay their taxes, that they actually align their businesses in line with the environmental and social goals we should have for this moment, for the reset, then we are losing the biggest opportunity in our lifetimes to create the future we both want and need and the next generation deserves.
Conversations around climate become increasingly politicized. How can we make sure that we can achieve this progress, staying away from the dirty politics?
It's really interesting to me how it is politicized in America in particular, but also in other places, because I think as human beings, we all need to breathe clean air. I think as human beings, we must all be as scared when fires threaten our homes. I think as human beings, we must all understand that COVID came from climate change and more pandemics will come. Business needs to help ensure that we have a just transition to this future. Leaving more people behind in a world where already a lot of people feel left behind is not a solution that will help us get there. There is no racial justice without addressing climate change. There is no gender justice without it, because when it comes to who is hit by this, it is disproportionately women and Black people and communities. We need to invite them to co-create this new normal and this transition into a green, just, inclusive future.
Just transition for me, it's a very key issue here, because obviously it has enormous consequences, not only for the economy, but also for society at large and for democracy. What are some practical steps that can be adopted to bring about this reset in a just way?
We need to change who is in leadership. We need to now find the courage to say that male, pale, and stale in the boardroom is not cutting it. We need to diversify and gender balance our decision-making tables, or we are not going to make decisions that are going to be bought into or actually are going to be influenced in a way that addresses the real issues that people in local communities are feeling.
If I'm a business person listening and I'm getting inspired by what you're saying, what can I practically do the moment I finish listening to this interview?
Start looking at human rights due diligence for your supply chain. Europe is leading on this, but I think this is going to become the new expectation. 2, really take a look at diversity and inclusion. How are you doing? And if you're not doing well, dial up, because that's going to transform your business and it's going to make you relevant for the long term. 3, think about shared prosperity. How can you start disclosing things that matter for everybody? And then last but not least, make ESG your new definition of success alongside profit.
Halla, it's always great talking to you. Thank you for being with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
That's all for today. If you liked this discussion, make sure you check out all the other episodes of TC Talks on our YouTube page. And since you are there, make sure you do subscribe. You've been watching TC Talks, the Thomson Reuters Foundation interview series, and is also a spin-off of our human rights event, the Trust Conference.